All right, it's good to be with you today. My name is Cisco Walker, and this is a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time. His name is Brian Orndorff, and we're here today. We're going to be having the discussion. Let's talk Albuquerque. We're going to be talking about Albuquerque, the international district, some of the things that are going on with the unhoused, and we're just trying to get people's attention to what is taking place in the Albuquerque area. I kind of call it like the old Albuquerque area, and there's a lot of problems that have been there for a long time. And so today we're just trying to thresh out these ideas and just have the conversation, talk kind of about the elephant that is in the room. And so we're going to be looking at this topic with the unhoused, fentanyl, the international district, and we're going to be talking about kind of like what's happening down there is it's kind of almost likened to like a zombie apocalypse, right? And how we as Christians, how we as people in society, like, are we really? How can we help? Like, how can we get involved? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? As it concerns the Albuquerque area. I'm from Albuquerque. Brian is from California, but we've seen the decay and the corruption, and sadly the disintegration of what used to be a somewhat great city, but sadly because of legislation, because of drug use, because of entitlement. All kinds of different things. We're seeing something take place that certainly I never dreamed of. I don't know if you ever thought it would
No.
it would get this bad. What do you think about the city likened to a zombie apocalypse with what's going on with the drugs and the crime and so forth?
Well, it's a lot like just a breakdown of society in general. Like Cisco said, I'm originally from California. I left there when I was 18 due to the increase in drugs. I was a former addict as well, but I left because just the smog, the homelessness, the drugs, the crime, the corruption, and just to get a fresh start. So I came to Albuquerque, where my father's side has lived for quite some time, since the 70s. And by coming out here, I used to tell a lot of my friends back home, come out to Albuquerque. It's a great place to start over. You got all four seasons. It's a growing city. It's fun. There's activities. There's stuff to do. Great weather. But unfortunately, like Cisco said, especially maybe the last maybe 10 years, if not 8 years, it's a place that I would not encourage anyone to move into, just because the crime, the homelessness, the drugs, just a political background that just makes no sense. It's almost like he said, entitlement, enabling, and it's just getting out of control.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm glad, I'm privileged to talk to Brian is because Brian has his pulse on what's happening, and he lived in the city for years and years and years. And there's a quote I have here. It says here, this quote says, the zombie apocalypse has stripped away our humanity and left us with only the primal instinct to survive. And I was thinking about that the other day, and how I think that's twofold. It stripped away the humanity of people who are hooked on fentanyl, because like people that are hooked on fentanyl, we can't really say that they're living. They're just simply trying to survive from one day to the next, from one moment to the next. I work in the fentanyl district, and there's people, they don't even know what day it is. They don't even know what time it is. They ask me, is today Friday? And like, it's Monday. And so I've seen this with people, and how humanity and that primal instinct to survive is like the only thing that's there. But then I've also seen it on the other side. There are the two sides to the coin. I have an apartment right at the start, really, of the international district, and there's times where like I can't even walk around the block because people are just coming from all directions. You know, hey, you got a cigarette? Hey, you got a phone? Hey, can I have this? Hey, can I have that? You know, people, they just start cussing you out, you know, and one thing that we're not trying to do here today is we're not trying to make little of people that are hooked on drugs, people that are suffering. We know that that they're very complicated, they're very sophisticated issues. There's reasons for people that are going through these things, but yet when you're a young man that's married and you're trying to raise a family, like, you begin to see through a lens that you don't see through if you're just a single guy that's going out, going to the bars, having a good time, whatever it might be. You know, you look at it a little bit differently, and I think that's fair to say, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, you know, like I had stated, I'm a recovering addict. So when I was younger, like he was stating, you know, whatever you did, it didn't really matter to me as long as you didn't hurt anybody, harm anybody, and you went about your business, because I was more preoccupied on dating women, going out to the bars, subsiding on check to check, living day to day. But now, being older, and I've been clean and sober for about 14 years, I'm married, I'm a business owner, and so I do still work in Albuquerque, but I chose to move out of Albuquerque for a lot of the reasons we've already stated. So a little bit I am detached, but it's because I chose to be detached. I still work in the city. I drive around the city every single day. And one of the reasons that I'm doing this video is we've talked a lot about the homelessness, the effects of policies in Albuquerque. And back in the day, I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of homeless people, but most of them were extremely mentally ill, or they indirectly chose to be homeless. There was people that, you know, the woman that always wore the blanket, or the guy that always had the denim vest and everything. And so it was kind of, you knew who the homeless people were. But since then, over the past, 20 years, it's probably increased by,
Yes.
50. It is insane. And now the homeless people aren't just mentally ill, but they're very dangerous. There's a big criminal element to it, including the drugs. The drugs are getting more harsh, and there's a lot of decriminalization of a lot of the elements that, in my opinion, are enabling and letting it grow and grow. And that's why I chose to move out of the city. But like I said, I still work in the city, so I'm very much involved in it, trying to run a business inside the element of crime. And it's interesting because you know that Route 66, the mother road that goes from Chicago to LA, back in the day, that was the main strip for prostitution, drugs, homelessness. And since then, now, a lot of people would say, well, I live in this part of town, I live in the other part of town, I don't have to see that unless I go down there. But now it's everywhere. It's just about every intersection in town. There's crime, theft, everywhere in town. So there really isn't anywhere safe to go anymore.
Yeah, and it's it's literally changed the landscape. And one of the reasons that we have chosen our title for the discussion is Zombie Apocalypse versus Christian Charity. And I think that's and I think that's a difficult place to come to, but one of the reasons we've chosen this is I've looked at George Romero's film, Night of the Living Dead. Brian's looked at the film, and we've drawn some comparisons. And a lot of people say, well, I don't I'm not really sure how you can see that, or how you can make those ties, or how you can make those connections. And so what we're going to try to be doing today is laboring to try to make these connections between one another, and to try to make these connections with you. And I think it's something that's very interesting. One of the things in George Romero's films is that the town, there was a portion of people where they just wanted to destroy, and they wanted to eradicate the ghouls, right? Because Romero refers to them as ghouls. And they just wanted to destroy and eradicate and get rid of these flesh-eating monsters. And what I have seen personally in the last several months. I've been back for a year, and I was completely taken back at what had happened to the city. But I find that there is a war. There's a polarization. There is one group of people where they want everyone out. They want the camps out. They want the homeless out. They want the drugs out. They want all of it just out, swept out of the way. Don't want to look at it. Don't want to see it. And I don't, I don't really know, like how we're ever going to get it back. But we have to try to figure out something. And then you have another, we're talking about the polarizations, and you have on this side, you have people that seem to me almost from an eatable perspective, where they're just simply loving people to death. And that, I think that's where the entitlement comes in, let's just give people everything they want. Let's make them safe. Let's make them secure. And by making them safe and by making them secure, somehow we magically think that everything is going to get better. And the city of Albuquerque has labored in that for, as he said earlier, 7 to 8 years, and I don't really know if necessarily it's getting better. So let's take a moment and just discuss those two polarizations. There's people that just want, they may not say this, but out loud, but just do whatever it takes to get people out.
Correct.
And then you have the other polarization. You have the other camp. It's almost like a war that takes place between you're on this side or you're on this side, and then you have the other side of that coin, where people say, well, let's love will keep us together, and that love that I'm talking about is not necessarily really anchored in Christianity. That love, let's give people everything that they need. Let's help people get this. And I'm not saying that we don't need to help people, but like, how do we find the middle ground where we don't want to just simply become bitter and hard-hearted towards those that are unhoused, towards those that need help, professional help, spiritual help, psychological help, and how do we not just literally love people to death?
Right. This is my own opinion, but I tell a lot of people that, especially in Albuquerque, I feel like, not based on actual numbers and figures, but I tell people 90% of the homeless people are ruining it for the 10% that truly could use the help. And what I mean by that is I honestly feel like about 10% of the homeless people I see on a day-to-day basis probably are truly down and out, struggling with extreme mental illness, no family members to speak of, PTSD, veterans, so on and so forth. And then the other 90% are just people that are trying to get their fix, trying to manipulate the system, or I've even known some people that were just short on rent. So they went down to the local street corner and said, well, might as well try to raise up some money by begging for a while. But like Cisco was talking about, it's interesting that we all, I would say, unless you're extremely detached, we all do feel for these people, and we all would like it to go away, in the sense that we wish we could fix it. But we also know reality is nothing's perfect. Nothing will ever be 100% fixed. There will always be wars going on this planet. There will always be conflict. There will always be hatred. There will always be racism. But what do we do about it? How can we minimize it? And that's what I'm hoping that the city, the state, our leaders could do, is minimalize this. But it seems like the going trend is just to enable more and more. Like, for instance, they set up a recent small village. I don't know.
Yeah, tiny homes.
Mm-hmm. So the government decided we'll go ahead and allot some money and build these little tiny homes, and I think they're like 200 square feet. And some of the restrictions are, you've got to come in, you've got to, abide by some rules. But what's interesting is there's nothing in effect towards drug testing for drugs. Or community coming. I think they restrict who comes in and out. But for example, if someone has fentanyl on them, they could go into that tiny home as long as they're allowed in there and just get high all day long. And there's just no restrictions. And it's interesting because in modern, normal society, you could, if you tested positive for fentanyl, you can get a job at McDonald's. But
Yeah.
yet these people in the tiny homes, they bring people in, and I can't remember. I forgive me,
Yeah.
but I can't remember who the city commissioner or whoever was in charge. They asked her about, well, do you think they should be checked for drugs? And she said, "quote Drugs is the least of our worry right now." And I disagree with that. I think the drugs are one of the main concerns that keeps people homeless. Is getting them clean and sober, getting them to an environment where their head is clear and they start realizing, hey, maybe I could work on my mental illness state. Maybe I could reconnect with family. Maybe I could get a job. Maybe I could dig myself out, because both Cisco and I have dug ourselves out from that same situation. So I know it's possible from firsthand
Yes.
account. I know this is
Yeah.
possible. And then on the flip side, when you're talking about Christian charity and enabling and everything, I as a Christian also believe in charitable work and helping people out. I just worry about, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line where people are required to do a little bit of the work themselves as opposed to everything just given to them? And we're starting to live in a society where everything's just given to people, and laziness, sloth is starting to take over, and there's no actual need to do a whole lot of stuff when everything's given to you. I mean, you could look at it as God as a generous and good father, but he also will punish us to learn lessons.
Right.
And so, not saying that the homeless are children, but we as a society, if we're doing well and we're in a better place financially, mentally, physically, should we be treating these people like kids, trying to get them into a state where they can truly grow and be awareness, maybe mentors, give them wisdom? Or are we acting like a parents who are just giving their kid everything and basically creating spoiled brats? And that's my opinion. It gets you start seeing the criminal aspect of everything, and people think that they can just do whatever they want.
Well, I'm glad that I'm so thankful that Brian brought up city and the state. How is the city trying to solve this problem? How is the state trying to solve this problem? But part of our discussion today is Christian charity, and like, what does Christian charity look like, and like, how do we apply Christian charity? And Thomas Aquinas felt that Christian charity was all centered around love, but people have a great misconception about love. And one of the great things, because we also have to reflect and say, well, how is the church helping out in making the international district a better place? Because the churches are overwhelmed now as well, the churches that exist in the international district. And there's a whole nother side of the communities, because one of the things that we're trying to do here today is we're trying to break down the stigmas that exist within the international district. A big stigma that exists in the international district is everyone in the international district is on drugs, everyone is on fentanyl, everyone is crazy, everyone has thousands of problems. That's not true. There are people that live in there, good people. They work, they're trying to do everything that they can, but because of their financial status, like, that's the only place that they can afford to live. And they can't afford to go anywhere else because they're kind of stuck, because that's just reality. With how much money you make kind of depends on where you're going to live, what you can afford, things like that. But there's a lot of people now that live in these communities, and there's a small majority of them, but they want the churches out. They want these shelters and these places for people to get hot food and clothes. Like, they're fed up because their businesses are ruined. They can't walk down the sidewalks because they have people, they have open air drug use, there's prostitution, there's feces that is on the sidewalk, and not everyone down there is living that kind of an existence. There's people that are tired up and they're fed up, and there's a small majority that say, if the churches, if these shelters, and if these Christian-based places, if they're out of here, then the people will also leave as well. So how do we define that Christian charity? How do we define that love? And a big misconception is that we just simply love the unhoused, or we love the drug addict to death, because that can be done. But this is something that Dostoevsky says here. He says, "I'm sorry, I can say nothing more to console you, for love in actions is a harsh and dreadful thing compared with love in dreams. Love in dreams is greedy for immediate action, right? I think that's truth. There is a part of when you love someone, you tell them the truth. When you love someone, when you truly love someone, you don't enable them to the point where they can just keep on going, keep on running amok. But you have to tell people at some point that they are destroying themselves, that fentanyl will kill them, that if they continue to go down that path, that they are going to hurt themselves and they are going to hurt other people, because there is a ripple effect in the Christian mindset of sin. Sin always has a ripple effect. And when you toss a pebble into the water, there's a ripple effect. And we've seen the ripple effects of what has happened with the drugs. That's why the city's decaying. That's why businesses are, people don't even want to have a business in those certain areas anymore. People would, I watch it week by week. I just see it decay a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And little by little, like it's like the life and the vitality and the history, even because it is Route 66, the history of that street, Central Avenue, there are major portions of that where you better be careful if you're driving down, if you're between San Mateo and Wyoming, you better slow down, you better watch out, because you're going to have people that are walking out into the traffic. You're going to have people, that are going to come up to your car and bang on your windows and want $2 or want to use your phone. Like you wouldn't believe the things that you see. And the hard part is to remember that underneath the fentanyl, underneath the drugs, there's men and women and kids that are made in the similitude of God. They're hurting. God knows them. God loves them. But love sometimes is a harsh and dreadful thing. And I think that we have to figure out that balance again of where we don't just simply love people to the point where we enable people to keep spiraling off down the road of destruction. What do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because, I don't know the exact number, but in the Greek language, there's multiple meanings for love.
Yes.
There's love for your heavenly Father. There's love for your husband or wife. There's a sensual love. There's a love, you can associate with artwork, or a love for crafts that you do. There's so many different versions of love. So I disagree when they say love is love, because there is different forms of love. And for me, most of the times, love for me, especially if it's related to the homeless, is, I guess you would consider it a tough love, because I want people to grow. I want people to get back on their feet. And I don't believe that's going to happen by allowing them to camp wherever they want, allowing them, like you said, to shoot up right on the street. I've gone up and down Central many times, and you see people with just a jacket over the head hitting the pipe, shooting up, and nothing is done about it. Now, I understand also the police presence, it's overwhelmed.
Yes.
And, they can't do everything. They can only do what they're bound to by law and everything. But when it comes to Christian charities as well, I'm all for shelters and food distribution and stuff like that. But, I've heard some of the stories that you've told me about different places and stuff. And, I don't know what the percentage of people that are actually coming around. That's to me, that's an important factor. I used to go to NA meetings and AA meetings, and we'd see people come and go. And that's the nature of human addiction. But it would be real encouraging to see people that would come back and stay. And then you would always see them grow. You'd see them get a job. And then all of a sudden they were a manager. Or they would show up and they had, were able to afford a car. And they were starting to get everything back to normal. Normal as in, what society wants to see as normal. But it's interesting, too, because you were talking about... and we discussed Night of the Living Dead, and I don't know if George Romero has actually ever really said this, but a lot of critics will use the ghouls or the zombies as capitalism. They were like...
consumerism,
It was consumerism,
yes.
Capitalism, and the whole idea that they were coming in to ingest and eat everything that was good or alive, and it was growing and surrounding what they did with the farmhouse in Night of the Living Dead. coming after all the different walks of life, all the type of different peoples with their characteristics, and that eventually capitalism and consumerism was going to eat everything alive. But I kind of think there's a juxtaposition now where the homeless, if you want to look at them almost as like living zombies on fentanyl, on xylazine or xylitol,
Yes.
and just going around, they're actually the opposite. They're destroying capitalism because, like you said, businesses are folding. There's constantly plywood on people's windows. Nobody wants to invest anymore. People are fleeing the inner parts of the cities. Our downtown is, I've read that a downtown of a city is the heart. It's the heartbeat. From there, all life flows in our downtown. They try to revitalize it, but there's a lot of issues with the downtown. But it's spreading, and it's really hurting business.
It is spreading, and there's a particular scene in the movie where Barbara and her brother, it actually begins that way, where they go to the graveyard. They go to a graveyard to put a wreath or some type of flowers on their mother.
It's their father, yeah.
Yeah, their father's grave. And then there's the scene where there's the zombies off in the background, and he comes along and he kills the brother. And then there's the scene where Barbara gets in the car, and like the car won't start. She can't get it started, so she puts it in neutral, and the car begins to kind of inch its way on a downward slope out of the graveyard. And the zombie comes up to the car, and he's banging on the windows and everything, and like, I have seen this, I'm not making this up, like 4 or 5 times right there by the big bank on Central Avenue, the big First National Bank. I've seen guys that are right in the median, and they pass stuff to try to stop that. They're on the median. They get out, they hop through the traffic, and they're going up to cars, and they're looking for the eye contact. And if they get the eye contact, they're hoping for a handout. But these a lot of these guys, and women as well, it isn't just men that are just, you can kind of understand why a man with intimidation and just the other day I was sitting there at the red light. I saw the guy come, and like, I didn't really have any money to give him, but I knew what he wanted, and I didn't give him the eye contact. And then he went around to this other car, and it was this young lady in a very nice car, probably not too savvy to street smarts. And it seemed to me, or it appeared to me, that the unhoused man, he sensed that vulnerability, and he sensed that naivety. And he went up to her, and he put his hands on her driver's side window, and was demanding money from her, and she was like completely terrified. And so, like, that's why it's not that hard to make these comparisons. And he's right about how it's bringing, like, you're seeing these things almost grow by the day, and it seems like they're getting worse, and they're getting worse, and they're getting worse. And so that's why we're having these conversations. There's so many businesses, the windows are boarded up. I work right there on Central in Tennessee. People come by there all the time. Hey, you want to buy razors? You want to buy batteries? I got this. I got that. I got this. I got this. I got that. I was at one of the methadone clinics last week, and these guys, unhoused guys, were outside, and they were talking about the stores that they were going to go into and just loot and steal as much as they could so that they could go out and continue to use fentanyl. And all that activity, all that nefarious activity, that is one of the reasons why that this great city is crumbling and literally falling apart. And so Christian charity, we have to begin to thresh out and explore those ideas of Christian charity, and how a love like the love of God will help people come out of those situations. But there does have to be that emphasis on tough love as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. And getting back to like the tiny house example, I'm all for giving out food. I'm all for giving out jackets, necessities, especially in the wintertime. But I don't understand why the concept of maybe having a metal detector before someone comes in. Hey, maybe a basic search. Let's see if, no needles, no drugs, no baggies, nothing allowed. If you want a nice meal, you want a place to sleep, that's fine. But put a little bit of emphasis into
On security.
on security for the workers there, for the area. I mean, for God's sakes, they're putting metal detectors into schools. So they're keeping the schools safe. They're also watching out for students, young people that might be bringing a gun, a knife, and everything. But we don't expect that from the homeless community or anything because, there's an image that gets portrayed, especially through the media, for me, that they're all just very, very innocent, down and out people. And we know there's also a major criminal element to the homeless as well. Like I said before, I think it ruins it for the minority of people that are trying to get their lives back together or are so mentally incapacitated, they just need the basic things in life to exist, even medical help and everything. But then we have, you've told me stories about some of the places you've worked where people have came in and just knocked things down and fighting and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that Christian Charities is a great thing, but there should be some parameters to it. There should be, not just open access, especially if someone can't follow some basic rules.
Exactly. And to be fair, the tiny homes, they have changed directors and management several times. I do know to a certain degree that they have tried to clean it up. They've tried to become a little more stringent. There's a little more rules in place. And the reason that we labor and the reason that we feel the way that we do is because despite the majority of all of the problems that surround all this, there is the minority, and the minority is the people. It's wonderful when people get the help, and I think that that's why everyone stays involved in, well, at least to some degree, with charitable works, is because you want to see the 1 out of 10 that gets help and gets a job and reintegrates himself in society and can stay clean and can stay sober. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I think this is really important, and this is kind of an issue that people they don't really like to talk about it anymore. But we're talking about the Night of the Living Dead, but we're also talking about Christian charity. And to be fair with the camp of Christian charity, I've chosen the illustration where Jesus goes to Gadara for the man that has been possessed with the legion, and he asks him what is his name, and he helps the man and he drives out the devils from the man. But one of the parts of the narrative says that when Jesus came to Gadara, there was a man that met him from the tombs with an unclean spirit. And the Bible says that no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, right? Now, the human restraints remind us that this demon-possessed man was not without those that loved him. Right? Even for that, they may not have been able to help him. They couldn't bring about his deliverance. They couldn't bring about a change, a significant change in his life, but they knew enough to restrain him and to hold him. That way he would not hurt himself, and that way he would not hurt other people. So the human restraints, they remind us that the demon-possessed man was not without those who loved him. Now, this is a hot-button question. Now, does incarceration, fetters and chains, actually help those struggling with drug addiction? Does incarceration actually help those with mental illness? Does incarceration actually help those who, because of their lifestyle of being on the streets for so long, like they won't conform to anything? You can say, we've got a hotel made out of gold and you can go stay in there. Oh, I don't want to stay in there simply because you told me I have to stay in there, and I'm going to control my own life. I'm going to make my own. So the big question is, because he was talking about the police department. And I remember that when I was on drugs and when Brian was on drugs, and you would go down Central Avenue, and if you went down to the war zone, they called it the war zone back then. If you went down there, APD was Rowdy Brown shirts. Like, you had a 50% chance, maybe even a 60% chance that you were going to be stopped, you were going to be searched, they were going to run your name, and if you had crack or if you had an illicit substance, you were immediately going to jail. The car was going to be towed, it was going to be put in the lot, like, you were going to lose everything. But now, because of legislation and because of many other things, like, it seems like you can just do whatever you want here. Like, I marveled at that when I came back.
Yeah, because Cisco was down south and he was thinking about coming back to Albuquerque, and I was warning him and also letting him know, you know, if you are going to work here, just be ready for a much stronger criminal element, a larger homeless population. And I have admiration for you for working with the people. I really do. But once he came here and had lived here for a while, it's like, so did, you know, my warning or my description of the city kind of hold true? And he said, no, actually, it was a lot worse than I had even led on to. We were talking the other day about now, I don't know what's going on, but there's a new trend where people don't even have license plates. Nor do they have a paper registration. Do they have a paper registration in their windows? They have nothing. It's just a blank bumper, and they're driving around. And I mean, you see this. I honestly see this maybe 1 out of every 75 cars in Albuquerque.
We're seeing it more now
Yeah.
than like 6 months ago. And like, good luck if somebody runs into you, and you better hope that, like, if the car can move and they can run away, like, there's a good chance that, like, you're just up the creek and they're gone.
And that happened to me recently. I was hit by
Right.
an uninsured driver, and now I'm stuck with the bill. There's not, you know, my insurance gave me a charitable donation. That's the way I look at it. But I'm still stuck with about $2,000 towards my car. But like you said, back in the 90s, you know, maybe you would go around without insurance. You know, they couldn't physically see that, and you took the risk. Okay, I'm uninsured, but you made sure you had a license plate. You made sure you had a registration tag. You made sure you didn't have a cracked windshield.
Yeah, they'd pull you over. I
tail
lost a car for things like that because of my situation and bad decisions. But no, there was no getting around those things.
No.
So you know, there's a large part of the of people that do social work and things like that, where, like, you know, they don't feel incarceration helps with drug addiction, mental illness, or being a nonconformist, and like, so, like, what do we do with that?
No, and I'm kind of twofold on that, because I do
Okay,
think
but that go ahead and give both sides.
right.
And
I believe that laws are important. I believe following laws are
good.
important. I believe breakdown of society is lawlessness. I think everyone should be held to the same, you know, everyone talks about equality. Well, then everyone should be equal under the law as well. And that doesn't mean because you're homeless or because you're a drug addict that you should be given certain rights or non-rights that other people are doing. You know, as a business owner, I get taxed a lot and everything, and then I see other people that, you know, in my opinion, get away with a lot of stuff. And I think that should be equal as well. However, incarceration in general, especially prison, I'm not a big fan of, because I feel it just teaches you to become a better criminal. You're in there, you have all the access to drugs you want. There's a element of you know, sexual violence, physical violence, intimidation, racism. You either click up with someone that looks like you know, whether it's the Aryan Brotherhood or the Black Gorilla or the MA or whatever element that is. And I just don't see how that can help people. Even people that I think want help once they're incarcerated and start feeling like I need to change my life. It's such a bad environment. It's very, very difficult to get that done. So I don't think the actual paying for your crimes is a bad thing. It's just where they send you. I don't see how many people can even correct the ship once they're in that place.
Well, and once again, you know, we are talking about the minority, the majorities. The majority of people, they incarceration may not help them, but there are I have known many people that because of incarceration, People are able to they're able to reevaluate. They're able to detox to some degree. They're able to begin to search out programs, and they're able to kind of come back down to reality. And I know that there's no perfect plan. I know that there's no utopia here. I know that even from a biblical perspective, Jesus says, you will have the poor with you always. You can do good to them whenever you wish. So like this idea of a utopia, and we'll do some more discussions on that coming up in the next few weeks about the utopia, because there is no utopia for this. There is no band-aid on this hemorrhage, so to speak. But there are times where because like Brian said, society has to have laws, and when those laws break down and when those laws disintegrate, then it has a profound effect upon every single person around. That's why you want to know why the stores are closing up, because it's one of the 10 commandments: thou shalt not steal, right? And when you violate the laws, whether they be the laws of God or whether they be the laws of man, however you want to look at that, but when those laws are broken and there's no repercussions for those laws, then that's why you have what's going on, where people go into the stores, they steal everything because they know that nothing will be done. People are standing on the corner, they're smoking fentanyl in the open air because they know that nothing is going to be done. If something, God forbid, were to happen in the city and you called the police department, the police may not even come for 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. So that lawlessness is what has led to the disintegration and the decay and the indifference, and that is what has polarized the two different camps of people that we're talking about. The homeless, let's just get rid of them. No, let's just love them to death. Well, you want to love everybody to death until you've got a camp on your sidewalk and you can't go outside because you've got all kinds of stuff going in. You've got people trying to get, it's totally different when it's in your own backyard. That is the difference, because this man is a good man. He goes to the city every day. He's a married man. He's a Christian man. He pays his tithes. He pays his taxes. He sees the disintegration. But he got to a point where he's like, I just can't deal with this anymore because nothing's being done about it. There's no solution for it. I see a lot of people trying to solve it, but it doesn't seem like it's being solved. So, what can we do then? Right?
Right. Well, and you spoke about, and I was speaking about prison and everything, but now there's just a revolving door policy. Like you said, there is no punishment, because you get in, you get right back out. I mean, every 24 hours, I see some heinous crimes, especially if you watch the news, and I get jaded, and I'm like, oh, they'll be out in 24 hours, and I go back to the Heavenly Father or a good father. They restrict their child. Hey, you're grounded for a week, and you don't see that in society anymore. Right. You don't see that. You see theft and everything as just minor misdemeanors, and they go back out. And it seems like, in particular, for our state and for our city, you hear about a guy that shot someone, a guy that killed someone driving drunk, and then all of a sudden they say, yeah, he's currently on probation. He was arrested 2 weeks ago for this and this and this, and that's that revolving door. And there needs to be a little bit more repercussion for what you do. And I could see if there's more repercussion for what you do, then charitable acts, especially through the Christian churches, could become a lot more meaningful as well, because you'll start getting a lot more people that are going to be grateful for these charitable acts, right, instead of just handouts that are deserved by them. I can't believe they're not out here feeding us. Why aren't they feeding us? And that's to me, that's the main element that especially city governments aren't realizing, is you can't give people everything that they desire. You got to give people what they need. And,
yeah, exactly.
And there's a fine line between that, but the way I look at it: food, shelter, clothing, medical. But there should be also, hey, if you're going to come in and eat at this shelter, maybe you could mop the floors for us. Maybe you could do this. Maybe you could do, put in some work. Maybe you could go and do some work with some charitable occasions as well, and I know that kind of stuff does happen and everything, but it's just a breakdown where people are just given everything they desire, and that's kind of scary because
Yeah.
I desire things too, but I know it's not going to happen unless I give in hard work. And where's that work element nowadays?
Yeah, well, no, that's exactly that's exactly correct. Um, one of the ways that we can begin to show Christian charity is, and one of the ways that we can begin to try to get our finger on the pulse of what is going on is, there's an interesting scene in Night of the Living Dead. There's almost a battle between the African American's character, and there's Cooper. Who's going to run the house? Who's
Ben and Harry.
Yeah, Ben and Harry. He says, you want to go down in the cellar, you want to put yourself in the death trap, and you can be the boss down here. But when I'm up here, I'm the boss up here. And one of the things that I noticed about what I noticed about Cooper's character is that Cooper does nothing but complain about the situation. Right? He doesn't want to help he doesn't want to help fortify the house. He doesn't, he has such a negative attitude about everything, and he becomes a detriment to the situation. And so one of the ways, and this isn't just, you're just going to do these things and it's all just going to click. It's all just going to make sense. You're going to have perfect peace about all these situations. But one of the things that we can learn about this is we have to begin to see the city for ourselves. You have to begin. You have to begin to see it. You have to begin to see the unhoused and the fentanyl users for themselves, because that is a part of Christian charity. You remember the illustration of Moses, where Moses left the comforts of the palace, right? Because he felt led or compelled by the drawing of the Holy Spirit. So he left the palace and he went down to the brickyards where the Hebrews were. And he saw them in their affliction, and it began to do something to him. It began to change him. When Paul was in Athens, he looked at the city, and it said that he was stirred and that he was provoked because he saw that the entire city was given over to idolatry. So one of the ways that we can begin to get more, we have to try to get more involved in some way, whether it be things like this, having the conversation. That's a big thing, just to simply have the conversation. We're going to post these. We're praying that people will watch these. We're praying that, I really think that they will. But one way to see the city is to, get involved by volunteering. If they have meetings, if they hold forums, whatever those things are, go out there and make your opinions known, because you have the right to do that. And if you can volunteer and if you can help, and you don't have to be on the serving line, sweating it out, or take some blankets, take some clothes, take some shoes, take some things, and get involved with a Christian charity that has a good reputation. And these are just simple, small little steps that we can take to get our city back. I talked to another man, and he had a positive outlook. He says, I know that for Albuquerque, all the things that go on in Albuquerque, he says, but I love this city. He said, and I know that there's still good in this city. And I think that there is. But so we just have to continue to pray, to labor, and to try to get involved, and to try to find the good in a bad and a desperate situation. So thank you, Brian, for talking with us, and we'll have this up very soon, and we're going to be having more conversations with Brian. He's a good friend of mine. He's an intelligent man. He's a Christian man, and he's going to give you a perspective that a lot of people kind of try to deny, but he does it with love, and he does it with intelligence. God bless you, and thank you.